All right, good afternoon and welcome to our Gender and Sexual Orientation PD. My name is Hannah Hardy and we have a few different presenters for this PD and they can say their names now.
My name is Allison Biddle.
Hi there, I'm Megan Boozer.
Hi, I'm Drew Starnes.
All right, and thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy this presentation and learn a lot and take some things back to your classroom to use. So just a brief overview of what this session is and what we'll be talking about, and what the purpose is to engage in the professional development for all of us to learn and discuss ways to be culturally responsive, providing safe and welcoming environment, which is what we all want to do for all students all the time. But this PD is specifically regarding gender and sexual orientation conversations and communities in our school. So we want to make sure we're being aware and have these things in our toolbox to have when these may arise in our classrooms.
So next we have our agenda. So we've already introduced ourselves and had our session overview. Then we will follow that up with an activity and a discussion. You'll get some more background information, research, best practices. We'll take a break, but if you also needed to take a break, you can step out as needed. We'll have another activity with a rubric, another group discussion, concluding information, a wrap-up activity, and then a digital feedback form. So our first activity, if you could visit slido.com and type in the code on the screen, will take 3 minutes. You'll see the question, what do you think when you hear gender and sexual orientation in education? So as you enter those words, it will generate a form for us. So these are some of the words that came back. Now, these are all submitted anonymously, so we don't know who said what. But the bigger words are words that were said and typed in more than one time. So the more they were generated, the bigger that they became. So we have things like scary being the main topic. So when we think of this topic in education, it tends to be very scary for us. We may fear offending someone. We may fear legality if we don't say something the right way. We also see things like off limits. Sometimes we feel like that's not our area. Some people say it's a choice. Some will say it's teaching. And we'll say that we need more PD, which is what we're currently doing. So you'll have to take a few minutes and discuss that with your table, the words you see, the words you might want to add after seeing other people's words.
Okay, so some common language and definitions that we can gather in today's PD session, because as our previous activity shared, there's a lot that we're not quite sure of, and that can lead to some uncertainty and feeling like certain topics definitely are off limits or challenging in the classroom. And as we're going forward and society progresses, these are things that teachers of all grade levels are being exposed to. So the first thing is the difference between sex and gender. So sex is being biologically male or female at birth, and at birth up to about age 3, there are few differences between boys and girls biologically until they really hit puberty, and then you start seeing some distinct biological differences. A lot of data shows that there are few intellectual differences, and even any that do exist, they're very minor statistically speaking, and can be overcome with the correct instruction. But gender differs by region and is also not binary. So there are a lot of terms now that teachers are gaining familiarity with, such as cisgender, non-binary, things of that nature. So some things about gender is that it's a socially constructed idea. It's influenced sometimes by religion. There's a spectrum of masculine traits and feminine traits. And one person may not necessarily encompass everything that is stereotypical for their particular biological sex. So gender is also reflected in how we look, how we dress and act. That is how other people perceive us, and our gender is through those things. It can alter our educational outlook. So what that means is that students who are of a certain gender may be treated differently in the classroom and have different educational opportunities, or feel that they have different educational limitations. It could be subject to subject or based off of the way teachers even interact and engage with them. So an example of that would be girls, perhaps in elementary grades, not necessarily as commonly now, but previously, if they weren't good at math or science, sometimes that was written off as, oh, well, that's just, girls are not strong in that area, which is a negative stereotype that can affect a female student's personal self-view. Gender is developed by socialization, and this basic anchor is typically developed by around age 3. So toys, clothing, nursery decor, media advertising, anything kids are engaging with, books, television, things of that nature. As we know, screen time is increasing for generations of young people now as they're growing up. Screen time is looking like 4 or 5 hours that they're engaging with media's depiction of gender socialization. And then students who are nonconformist to the gender that aligns with their biological sex can often encounter bullying and ostracization by their peers. So some of the challenges for boys face some challenges when it comes to gender as far as androcentric pressures, which just means living up to the stereotypes of a society that's driven by this male idea, having to be the main breadwinner. Things about, like, for example, not showing emotion or crying or things of that nature. This can then sometimes lead to toxic masculinity, which is where the need to express emotion and that repression of that emotion leads to violence or even the denigration of other groups, such as women, who could be perceived as a threat to that privilege and power. Other destructive behaviors. Statistics show that boys face a greater likelihood of engaging in destructive behavior or suicidal behavior because they're less likely to seek mental health help, because that could be seen as a weakness, seeking help from an outside source. The reading data for the past 30 years has shown the boys typically score lower in reading achievement. So this is one of those areas where teachers can be aware and then work to improve reading instruction for boys. The challenges for girls are similar, but different at the same time. So there's a little bit more social latitude and gender, but there is also more, I'm sorry, my light timed out, institutionalized sexism that they have to overcome, lower paid positions and prestige. And then often females are going to work in areas where it's in a nurturing, caregiving type of profession with a male supervisor. There's the motherhood bias is another thing that is a challenge for females, where a working female who is a mother has a harder time securing raises and progressing in the workforce, whereas a woman who does not have children, often they do not experience the same level of wage gap or upward mobility that a female who has children does in the workplace. Other issues that are relevant to gender for girls is sexual harassment, and also when it comes to academic achievement, STEM data. So science, engineering, mathematics, those fields currently still do not see as many female professionals in those fields as male professionals. So some education topics that we would like to explore are going to be that are topics of concern for educators that have come up in other sessions would be bathrooms. That is definitely a very public topic right now. Athletics, having students of a different gender participating in a sport that is typically one gender. Bullying, harassment. Teachers have rights as well, so employee rights being protected. What's the proper etiquette when it comes to preferred names or pronouns, the terminology to use, and do these students have parental support? Or if a teacher is honoring a student's preferred pronouns, would that be something that a parent would not support? And lastly, when it comes to sexuality, LBGTQIA stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning. Questioning is becoming a more common use of that because queer can have negative connotations depending on the person that you're talking to. So it's a word that's being reclaimed by the community, but it still to some could have negative connotations. Intersex, asexual, or ally would apply to someone who has no preferences or someone who is supportive of equal causes.
All right, so next we looked to see what does the research say, and as these things are getting more progressing in our society, as she mentioned, research is fairly new. However, when we were looking and seeing what was out there, there were some from several years ago, so that was very exciting to see. And the first part of the research I saw was that there's a lack of teacher professional development, which we've already touched on a little bit, and learning opportunities for teacher growth regarding gender equity. And that was in 2007. So that's been a while. It's been a while since we've known that there's a lack of professional development. And so that's part of the reason why we're doing this here today. And next, and all of these research quotes and information is from scholarly articles that have been, studies have been completed on. This here with 2 federal laws in the United States, this was really shocking to me. Would have provided explicit protections to LGBTQ students in public schools. These acts were called the Safe Schools Improvement Act, introduced in 2007, which is the same year of this article over here. And then the Student Non-Discrimination Act, introduced in 2011. But the kicker down at the bottom is that both were, they both died in committee, so they were not passed. And the Safe Schools Improvement Act in 2013, and this article was in 2016. So that's why we're, if not now, when are we going to start protecting these students and giving some advocations for that? Lastly, in 2019, which is pretty newer, logistic regression results indicated that school safety and feeling safe at school, bullying, skipping school due to feeling unsafe, shared experiences, especially among LGBTQ and transgender youth, and that these experiences are differentially based on the intersection of sexual orientation and gender identity. So it's really eye-opening to see that, and we know that these things are happening. We've already discussed it some in this presentation, but the mental health issues of these students and bullying, regardless of what you're being bullied for, bullying is never okay. And so having these professional developments to learn and get these things in our toolboxes to help when these things may arise and hopefully push for them to go away would be the best. And here are some just best practices and tips that you can put in your toolbox to take back to your classroom. First, to identify your own implicit biases that you're not, you don't think that you have, but when you reflect and think on that, you realize are there, becoming self-aware and taking action. And depending on different locations in the United States and different ways that we were raised and things you take with you as an educator, as a human being, things that you take with you and implicit biases that you may have, it's important to be self-aware of those and to be mindful of your interaction with students. Are you interacting more or less with the girls? Are you interacting more or less with the boys? Are you more quicker to get onto the boys for acting up, or in what statistics have shown us, more quick to get onto the girls because boys will be boys, as most people say. So just being mindful of all of those interactions and gender equity, being gender conscious, as that she was speaking earlier about not saying, oh, well, you're just not good at math and science because you're a girl. You're better at writing a paper, or you're better at English, or you're better at making a presentation, so forth. Monitor curriculum and looking for hidden curriculum impacts. So being mindful of what your curriculum is teaching. If it's an older curriculum, are there practices that we don't necessarily use anymore in the classroom? Are there things mentioned that are not really said out loud, but they're inferred? Just to be mindful, especially with older kids that are reading things on their own, checking out books in the libraries and reading things on their own that you may not have seen, just to be mindful of that. Being proactive as well as reactive to issues that arise in the classroom. So proactively speaking, helping these things not happen, but then when the unfortunate circumstances do arise, having things ready to know what to do, how to react, and most importantly, in bold print, being a safe space for all students, because we know as educators and everybody we always say that our classrooms may be the only safe space that these students get at all. So making sure that we are indeed making that place a safe space for them so that they are comfortable, and not only comfortable to learn, but just comfortable in general, because we want to be a safe space for everyone. And bullying is never okay with this infographic here. We always want to be kind and be compassionate of others, no matter if we think the same or differently as them. Overall, just we want to keep everyone safe and make sure they feel safe.
Okay, this is our second activity for this professional development. This is a activity that is going to help you guys kind of learn to discuss this topic. As we all know, it's been a long time situation of people just not wanting to discuss it or not talk about it. So you'll use the bingo card that you got at the beginning of this meeting. You're going to read your card, note mentally which ones you can answer personally. And then you're going to want to move around the room and talk with your colleagues and ask each person if they know some of the information on the bingo card. Okay, each person can only sign one square on the card, and you're going to circulate around the room for about 5 minutes and see how many of these squares you can get. Give everyone a little bit of background information on this topic, as well as maybe everyone can learn some of the new information about this topic and not be uncomfortable talking about it. Especially with each other as educators, sometimes things like this just get swept under the rug instead of talking about it. And this is activity just to kind of trying to make everyone comfortable.
Okay, so I hope you had a great time with that activity. I hope that you saw that we made this a safe space for that activity. You were able to go around and speak with your coworkers, learn some new things, and work together. And that's what we generally want for all of our students, no matter what. That is our goal. We want them to feel safe, to be able to learn, to work together. And they have to do that by respecting one another. And we need to make that respect very known in our classroom. So I hope that you gathered a lot of new learning, learned a lot about this topic in education. I hope that you'll take these thoughts back to your classroom. Really think about your teaching. Maybe those bias that you didn't realize that you had. You didn't realize that you called more on the boys, less, and girls on less, and vice versa. Maybe you didn't realize when you made your seating chart, you put certain students in certain spots and things like that. We want you to continue this discussion. So when you have your grade level meetings this week, I want you to take maybe that first 15 minutes and just discuss what you learned, what you noticed about your teaching style that you can adjust to fit the needs of all students. And just know that we're always here for support and questions if you ever have any concerns or anything that you want to go back over again with us.
And lastly, this is a different take on an exit ticket. I know that we do this in a lot of PDs. Exit ticket that you keep. So take a note card that's on your table, any pen that is there, and then work with your team at your table to write one strategy that you will implement in your classroom tomorrow. And then, as she was saying, when you do your grade level meetings this week, you can also refer back to these. This is why you're going to keep them. You can refer back to them. You can change them, edit them, share them, and take it to your classroom to keep it with you, to remember it and reference it, and again for those meetings. And again, as she said, always reach out with any questions or concerns or any strategies that you may want to share. And we thank you so much for joining us today. And here we go.
So next you'll have this little feedback form. This is just a quick version. You also have a QR code on the bottom of your agenda. These are the questions that you'll see. How would you rate the session? Did this session give you more knowledge? Did you find new ways to address topics in school? Do you feel more comfortable with the topic after we've discussed it? Were the activities helpful? I want you to list what was the most beneficial learning and why. Just something quick and short, don't overthink it. And what areas of the topic you would like more information about, because we would love to continue to help you learn. So you can scan on the screen or you can scan your agenda.
All right. And then lastly, these are just our references, and we will share this document out with you, this presentation out with you. If you want to reference any of these articles that we mentioned in the presentation, if you want to go back and read them, if not, that is okay. They're just here for you. Again, we'll send this presentation out to your emails. I'm going to go back to the QR code for you so that you can scan it. Just wanted to share that. And thank you so much for joining our PD, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.